This is Margin Machine, where we follow the money behind AI. One person. No employees. Billing $80 an hour to Fortune 500 procurement teams. And his actual cost per billable hour? Around $7. By the end of this video you'll know exactly how a new class of solo operators is capturing enterprise margins using AI agents, and why the obvious explanation, that they're just cheap freelancers with fancy tools, is completely wrong. Welcome back to another money trail. Meet the model. We're not talking about one specific person here, we're talking about a playbook that's emerging fast enough that it shows up in Stripe dashboards, Reddit threads, and increasingly in LinkedIn posts from very confused ex-agency founders who can't figure out why they're losing bids. The structure is simple on the surface. Someone, usually with a background in ops, marketing, or light engineering, sets up a small AI agent stack. They bill clients for outcomes, a completed workflow, a processed dataset, a campaign drafted and scheduled. They don't bill by the task. They bill by the hour, at rates that used to require a full team behind them. The going rate in this niche, for what gets marketed as AI-powered process automation consulting, is reportedly $75 to $120 per hour depending on the vertical. Healthcare ops and legal admin are at the top of that range. E-commerce and marketing automation sit lower. The client sees an hourly consultant. What they're actually paying for is an agent loop that runs while the operator sleeps. But here's where the math starts to get uncomfortable. Let's follow the money exactly. A mid-tier operator in this space is running somewhere between 3 and 6 core tools. They're paying for an LLM API, usually OpenAI or Anthropic, on a consumption basis. A busy month of agent runs reportedly costs them $40 to $120 in raw API calls, depending on task complexity and how tightly they've optimized their prompts. Then there's the orchestration layer, something like Make, N8N, or a newer entrant like Relay. That's roughly $20 to $50 per month. A knowledge base or vector store, maybe Pinecone or a Notion-based workaround, call it another $20. CRM, Outreach, maybe a light project management tool. Total monthly tool spend for a well-run solo operation, around $200 to $400. Now divide that across a 40-hour billing week and you're looking at somewhere between $1.25 and $2.50 in software overhead per billable hour. Add in the operator's own time, because they do still spend real hours on client calls, QA, and prompt tuning, and the true all-in cost per delivered hour rises to maybe $7 to $15. Against an $80 billing rate, that's an 82 to 91% gross margin. And that's not a typo. But the question nobody's asking is, how did they convince a procurement team to pay enterprise rates in the first place? Here's the part nobody mentions. The margin isn't really coming from the AI. It's coming from the positioning. The operators running this model almost universally do one thing: they never sell AI automation. They sell a named deliverable with a business outcome attached. Not, I'll automate your lead intake. Instead, I'll cut your sales team's manual data entry from 11 hours a week to under 2. The price is anchored to the value of that outcome, not to the cost of producing it. This is actually a very old consulting trick, value-based pricing, but AI has changed the leverage ratio dramatically. Before, if you promised to save 11 hours a week, you might spend 8 hours a week delivering it. Your margin was thin. Now, once the agent is built and tuned, it might take 45 minutes of oversight per week to maintain. The leverage has flipped. The operators who figured this out early stopped thinking like freelancers and started thinking like software companies, except with zero engineering headcount and a sales cycle measured in days, not quarters. If you saw our video on the $47 a month tool quietly replacing $50,000 consultants, you already know where this is going. Commoditized expertise is always the first casualty. And right now, the expertise being commoditized is project management, data processing, and Tier 1 client communication. Would you charge enterprise rates for AI-assisted work, or would you feel obligated to disclose it? Tell me in the comments, I'm genuinely curious where people land on this. Because the ethics conversation is coming, and the money conversation is already here. This is where everyone gets it wrong. People hear solo operator making $30,000 a month, and they picture someone grinding 200 hours of client work. The actual model looks nothing like that. The operators hitting those numbers are running what amounts to a small portfolio of retainer clients, typically 4 to 8 companies, each paying a flat monthly fee for a defined scope of agent-assisted work. The fee structure is usually disguised as an hours bundle, up to 40 hours of process automation support per month. But the actual hours delivered by the operator personally? Often closer to 8 to 12. The agents are covering the rest. A realistic example, 6 clients at $4,500 per month each. That's $27,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Tool costs, under $400. The operator's personal time, roughly 60 to 80 hours per month across all accounts. That's an effective hourly rate, before expenses, of somewhere between $337 and $450 per hour. Reported. Not guaranteed. But documented in enough income reports and case studies that the pattern is clearly real. The ceiling on this model isn't talent or time. It's client acquisition and scope creep. And the operators who've cracked $50,000 months have solved one problem specifically: they stopped doing custom builds and started selling the same agent stack, renamed, to different industries. That's the productization step. And it's where this model starts looking less like consulting and more like something else entirely. Nothing this good stays quiet. There are at least 3 forces compressing this margin window right now. First, the platforms themselves. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, they all have a direct financial incentive to offer turnkey agent products that eliminate the need for a human orchestrator. When GPT-5's deep research mode can be pointed at a workflow and just run it, the value of the person who knows how to stitch together make and pinecone drops sharply. Second, supply. The number of people who can build a functional agent stack is growing at an accelerating rate. Every cohort-based course, every YouTube tutorial, every new no-code tool lowers the barrier. When the skill becomes common, the premium evaporates. Third, and this is the subtle one, enterprise procurement is waking up. Legal and compliance teams at larger companies are starting to ask questions about AI in vendor workflows. Some are requiring disclosure. A few are writing it into contracts. The operators who've built their model on opacity are one policy memo away from a repricing conversation. The smart money right now is on operators who are racing to build proprietary data advantages, fine-tuned models on client-specific data, agent memories that are genuinely hard to replicate, before the commodity wave hits. They're not just selling hours anymore. They're building moats. And one of them just raised outside capital to do it at scale. We follow the money here every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next trail. So what does a 91% margin on a solo AI services business actually mean? It means we're in an arbitrage window. The gap between what AI agents cost to run and what the market is trained to pay for human expertise has never been wider. The operators capturing that gap right now are doing something specific. They're pricing against the old world while operating in the new one. That gap closes. It always does. It closed for web design in the early 2000s. It closed for SEO in the 2010s. It's closing now for certain categories of legal research and financial analysis. We've covered that in previous episodes. But right now, in process automation, in AI-assisted ops consulting, in what some are calling agentic services, the margin is real, the runway is short, and the number of people who've actually mapped the cost structure is still surprisingly small. The business model here isn't really about AI. It's about being the last human in the loop at exactly the moment the market is still paying for one. That changes. The question is how fast. And the next layer of this story involves one specific category of business that's about to get hit hardest, not by AI agents undercutting them, but by their own clients building the same stack internally. If you want to know which industry is sitting on the biggest in-house AI time bomb right now, click the video on your screen.